The brass key in my pocket felt wrong before dinner even started. Heavier than a garage key had any business feeling. It had been there since that afternoon, when I locked my detached garage in Mesa after checking the overflow inventory my son had been storing there. Now, across a private dining room in Scottsdale, I could hear forks tapping china, low laughter, and the steady breath of the air conditioner above us. Scott's cologne carried across the table every time he leaned forward. My thumb kept finding the worn teeth of that key through my coat pocket. "Dad's the reason I learned to check everything twice," Scott said, lifting his wine glass. 30 years in aviation maintenance will do that to a man. Raymond Cole could turn a loose screw into a federal investigation. A few people laughed. I was 63, retired 3 years, and I'd spent most of my working life around aircraft, where a number stamped into metal meant exactly what it said. You didn't guess. You didn't round it off, and you didn't laugh when two records disagreed. Scott knew that. He also knew why I had gone quiet. Beside my plate lay a glossy portfolio from Cole's signature renovations. Scott had passed copies around while talking about expansion. I opened mine to Mesa Vista. Beneath photographs of the finished kitchen was a short equipment list. One line caught me. Backup generator. Same model as the unit sitting in my garage. "When did you finish Mesa Vista?" I asked. Scott kept smiling. "Months ago. Generator 2? The stem of Blake Turner's wine glass clicked against his plate. Scott's business partner looked down. My son didn't. "Yes, Dad. The generator 2. I ran one finger under the equipment line. "You sure?" Scott's smile thinned. "I generally know when my own projects are finished." Linda shifted beside him. Her bracelet scraped softly against the tablecloth as she reached for her water. A colleague cleared his throat. "Ray, Scott says you've been helping with storage." "Temporary overflow," I said. Scott laughed once. "Helping is generous. He logs every box that crosses his property. Model numbers, serial numbers, dates, copies of copies. You'd think my garage inventory was waiting for clearance from the FAA. That got another laugh. Smaller this time. I closed the portfolio. "Then you won't mind one more question." Scott set his glass down. "Dad, why was a Mesa Vista generator in my garage this summer?" Silence moved around the table in pieces. A fork stopped against a plate. Someone near the far end shifted a chair. Blake rubbed his thumb along the edge of his napkin. Scott leaned toward me. "You're confused." "Could be." "You are." "Then clear it up." His jaw moved once. "Equipment gets reassigned. Change orders happen. Customers change their minds. That's business." "Maybe." "Not maybe." His voice stayed low, but the smile was gone. "This is exactly why I don't discuss operations with you." I could smell red wine where someone had spilled a few drops near the centerpiece. Scott lifted his glass again and turned toward the table. "Anyway, before my father audits dessert, I'd like to thank everyone who actually helped build this company." The laughter came late. He began naming architects, lenders, designers, and clients. With each name, his voice grew easier. By the time he reached Blake, the room had started breathing again. Then Scott looked at me. And Dad, of course, for teaching me what not to become. A man across from me stared at his plate. Linda whispered, "Scott." My son heard her. He kept going. "I mean it. There's something useful about watching a man spend his whole life checking other people's work. Makes you want to build something of your own." I folded my napkin and placed it beside my plate. "Did you?" Scott's glass stopped halfway to his mouth. "Did I what? Build something of your own?" Blake muttered. "Ray, maybe this isn't the place." Scott gave him a quick look. "No, let him talk." So I did. Mesa Vista. Was that generator installed there? Scott put down the glass, hard enough to splash wine over his fingers. "I already answered you. You said the project was finished, and I said equipment gets reassigned. Those aren't the same answer." His chair shoved backward with a sharp wooden scrape. For a second I thought he was leaving. Instead, Scott reached across the table. His hand caught the edge of my dinner plate. It hit the floor. Porcelain cracked under the table. A piece of steak slid against my shoe, warm gravy soaking into the cuff of my pants. Someone inhaled through his teeth. Scott looked down at the broken plate, then at me. "If you want dinner," he said, "lick it off the floor." Nobody laughed. A server had stopped just inside the doorway. I heard the faint rattle of dishes on her tray. Linda said my son's name again, quieter now. I pushed my chair back and stood. At 63, I didn't move as quickly as Scott did. I didn't need to. I straightened my coat, reached into the pocket, and took out the brass key. Scott watched it come out. That was the first thing all evening that shut him up. I laid the key on the white tablecloth between his wine glass and the portfolio. 3 words. "Open the garage." The color left his face so quickly, even Linda noticed. "What?" she asked. Scott didn't look at her. Blake did. His eyes moved from the key to Scott, then back to me. One of the lenders at the far end of the table said, "What's in the garage?" Scott picked up the key. "Old junk." I looked at him for another second. Then I left. The restaurant door closed behind me, cutting off the voices. August heat clung to the pavement. Beside my truck, I wiped food from my shoe with a napkin. My phone buzzed before I started the engine. "Scott, do not touch company property. I'll collect it tomorrow." I read the message twice. Old junk at the table, company property in writing. That was enough to send me back to Mesa without calling him. The detached garage sat behind my ranch house, separate from the main building. I used the keypad because Scott still had the brass key. The door motor groaned overhead, and warm trapped air rolled out carrying cardboard, machine oil, and dry Arizona dust. Cabinet boxes lined one wall. Wrapped appliances sat near the workbench. The generator rested near the rear, exactly where it had been that afternoon. Scott had started using my garage for overflow storage in June. At first he'd text me photographs and ask, "Did Westbridge leave yet?" Or "Which cabinet set came in Tuesday?" After the third call, I started a log. Old habit. Date in. Project label. Model. Serial when there was one. Date out. Scott had teased me about it, but he kept asking me to check it. I switched on the workbench lamp. My notebook was in the top drawer. Beside it sat the working photocopy I'd made at the end of July. I'd copied maintenance records for too many years to trust a single sheet of paper. Older monthly copies were in my safe deposit box with Evelyn's documents, mostly because I had nowhere better to put them after she died. I opened the notebook. Mesa Vista appeared on an earlier page. Generator. Model number. Serial number. I crouched beside the physical unit and wiped dust from the metal plate with my thumb. The stamped number matched. Back at the bench, I turned forward several pages. Westbridge. Same model. I lowered the paper closer to the lamp. Same serial. For a while, all I heard was the ceiling fan clicking once on every turn. There were innocent explanations. A customer could cancel. Equipment could be moved. A project name could be entered wrong. I had spent too many years around maintenance records to accuse anyone because of one duplicate line. So I checked again. Mesa Vista. Westbridge. Same machine. My phone buzzed on the workbench. Another message from Scott. 9 tomorrow. Have the garage open. I looked from his text to the generator, then back to the 2 entries. The question was no longer why Scott had turned pale when I put the key on the table. It was what he needed out of my garage, before I had time to understand what I was looking at. Scott's truck was due at 9, so at 8:15 I was on my knees beside the generator with my phone inches from the metal plate. The garage already held the day's heat. Cardboard smelled dry and dusty, and the concrete pressed hard through my jeans while I took pictures of the serial number. The Mesa Vista markings still stuck to one side of the crate, and the surrounding boxes exactly where they sat. I photographed the notebook too, then the working copy. Nothing moved. At 8:53, tires crunched over my driveway. Scott arrived first. Blake's SUV came in behind him. My son stepped out wearing a polo with the company logo and sunglasses he didn't take off until he reached the garage. No apology for dinner. No mention of the plate. "Open it," Scott said. "It's open." He looked past me toward the generator. "Then don't make this harder than it needs to be." Blake stayed near the driveway, one hand hooked in his pocket. He had the same tight, careful look he'd worn at the restaurant when I said Mesa Vista. I pointed at the generator. Which project owns that now? Scott pulled off his sunglasses. Westbridge. And before Westbridge? Mesa Vista. So it was moved. Reallocated, my son said. The Mesa client changed the order. We reassigned the unit. Happens all the time. Blake finally stepped closer. It's normal, Ray. Materials move between jobs when change orders hit, especially on custom work. That was possible. I knew enough about maintenance to know that records changed when equipment assignments changed. A serial number appearing under two jobs wasn't proof of anything by itself. I looked at Scott. Why did your portfolio say Mesa Vista was complete months ago? He gave a short laugh. Because it's marketing material, Dad. It's not an engineering turnover package. Complete means complete. To a client looking at kitchens, it means the house was substantially done. Scott pointed toward the generator. A backup unit can move after that. One line in a brochure doesn't rewrite a contract. Again, possible. That bothered me more than a bad excuse would have. Scott moved toward the generator. We're taking it. I'm not stopping you. His head turned. Really? I said I'm not stopping you. I didn't say I was done asking. Blake exhaled through his nose. Ray, this is a family argument sitting on top of a storage issue. Don't make it something else. What would make it something else? I asked. Neither man answered. A crew truck rolled in a few minutes later, and two employees began checking labels while Scott directed them. I stayed out of the way. Every crate that left, I photographed. Every label. Every time. Scott noticed. You planning to send those to somebody? He asked. I'm planning to remember what was here. You have a notebook for that. And copies. His mouth flattened. By 10:30, half the wall had cleared. The generator was still there, because the crew needed a liftgate truck that hadn't arrived yet. Scott left Blake to supervise, and drove off after telling me, don't touch it. Blake waited until Scott's truck disappeared before speaking. He's under pressure, Ray. From me? From everybody. Blake rubbed the back of his neck. Jobs overlap. Vendors miss dates. Customers change scope after materials are ordered. If you freeze every detail at one moment, everything looks worse than it is. I looked at the generator. I'm not freezing anything. I'm asking where one machine was supposed to be. Blake glanced toward the driveway, then asked Scott, don't ask the paperwork to explain a business. That sentence stayed with me. Paperwork had explained airplanes just fine. I almost laughed. That was the third time Scott had told me not to touch something sitting on my property. After they left for lunch, I went inside and opened my laptop. If you've ever spent years maintaining aircraft, you learn that memory is the least interesting part of a record. Dates matter. Attachments matter. What someone wrote before they had a reason to change the story matters most. I searched my email for Mesa Vista. Too much came up at first. Photos Scott had sent. A paint question. A vendor schedule. Then I found a message from June with the subject line, quick inventory check. Scott had written, Dad, confirm the Mesa equipment below is still in your garage before pickup Thursday. Attached was a status sheet. I opened it. My finger stopped on the trackpad. The generator line carried the same model and serial number I had photographed that morning. Status. Installed and commissioned. I read it again. Installed. Commissioned. Yet in June, Scott had asked me to confirm that exact unit was still in my garage before pickup. There could still be an explanation. Wrong status sheet. Clerical update. A copied template. Nobody corrected. I had seen bad paperwork in perfectly honest operations. So I called Miguel Santos. I'd met Miguel twice when supplier deliveries came through my place. He had a voice like gravel over a phone line and no patience for questions that wandered. Ray Cole, he said after I gave my name. Scott's dad with the aircraft logs. That's me. What broke? Maybe nothing. I need one general answer. That I can probably give you. I read him the model and asked, does each physical generator carry one unique serial number? Yes. Can that serial ever belong to two units? No. One unit, one serial. Can you tell me where this one shipped? Miguel went quiet for half a second. No. I waited. That's customer account information. If the homeowner authorizes release, or there's a formal request, that's different. I'm not giving you account history because you're his father. Fair enough. Ray. His tone changed slightly. Whatever you're checking, write down what you actually know, not what you think it means. I already did. I figured. The call ended there. By early afternoon, the generator was gone with the liftgate truck. I stood in the empty space it left behind and looked at the dust outline on the concrete. One machine, one serial, two project names, and one status sheet saying the machine had already been installed while it was still sitting 30 feet from my kitchen. The Mesa Vista sheet included the homeowner's contact information because Scott had sent me the full equipment page. I stared at the number longer than I liked. Calling a customer of my son's business crossed a line. Then I remembered the plate hitting the floor. Not the insult, the question he never answered. I called. A man named Thomas Reed answered. I told him exactly who I was before asking anything else. I'm Scott Cole's father. I'm not calling on behalf of his company. That's a strange way to start a call, Thomas said. It's a strange call. I gave him the generator model and serial. Was that unit ever installed at Mesa Vista? Silence. Then Thomas said, Scott told us the original unit was reassigned after a change order. That's what he told me too. We disputed the replacement credit for months. I sat down at the workbench. Thomas continued, Why are you asking? I logged that serial in my garage after a company sheet marked it installed. Another pause. Ray, I know another couple dealing with a delivery problem. Westbridge, Martha, and George Ellis. I said nothing. They've been comparing notes with us because Scott gave both families different explanations about reassigned equipment. Thomas lowered his voice. If you're willing, I can give Martha your number. I looked at the empty patch of concrete where the generator had been. Give it to her. Martha called at 6:12 that evening. Her voice was steady, but papers kept shifting near the phone. We paid for a generator with that model, she said. Scott says it was reassigned twice. I need to know what you saw. I told her only what I could support. The serial, the dates in my log, the status sheet. Nothing more. When I finished, Martha was quiet. Then she said, I have our invoice and the payment record. I don't want to send them around yet. George and I would rather meet you in person. That's fine. There's one more thing, she said. I waited. The numbers on my copy don't match what Scott told us. The papers shifted again. Can you meet tomorrow? Before I show you anything, Martha Ellis said, I need to know whether you're here as Scott's father or as someone who actually intends to tell me the truth. We were sitting in a small conference room at Dana Brooks's office in Tempe the next morning. The air conditioner hummed above us. George Ellis had set a thick folder on the table, its corners soft from being carried around, and Martha kept one hand flat on top of it, as if somebody might try to take it away. I'm here as both, I said. That's the problem. George looked at Dana. The attorney hadn't promised anybody a lawsuit. When I called her after Martha's phone call, she'd spent 10 minutes asking what I had personally seen, and whether I'd moved any of Scott's materials. Then she told me to bring copies, not conclusions. Dana folded her hands. Nobody has to give me anything today. If you do, I'll note where it came from and keep the originals with you, unless there's a reason not to. Martha opened the folder. First came the remodeling contract, then change orders, then an invoice with Cole's signature renovations across the top. My eyes went straight to the equipment line. Same model, same serial, the number I had photographed in my garage. George slid another sheet toward me. That's the draw request. A canceled check copy sat behind it, along with a bank confirmation showing payment cleared. I read the amount twice. You paid this? Martha tapped the line with one fingernail. We paid the draw that included the generator. Scott told us delivery was delayed, then told us the original unit had been moved to another project and ours would be replaced. When? June. That word landed harder than the amount. My status sheet from Scott was also from June. Installed and commissioned on paper, sitting in my garage, in fact. George pulled out his phone and showed me a photograph of their house. New stucco, fresh landscaping, a concrete pad near the utility wall. Empty. That was taken last week, he said. No generator. Dana looked at me. What can you establish from your own records? I opened my notebook copy. The unit with this serial was in my garage on the date I logged it. I photographed the plate before Scott's crew removed it yesterday. I also have an email Scott sent me with a Mesa Vista status sheet listing that serial as installed. Martha's chair creaked when she leaned back. So he sold us something that belonged to Mesa Vista? Dana answered before I could. We don't know that. Martha turned toward her. We paid for it. You paid under a contract and draw schedule, Dana said. That matters. But ownership, reassignment rights, delivery obligations, and whether a representation was false all depend on the documents and what actually happened. We're not skipping those steps. Martha's mouth tightened. George touched her wrist. She's saying, don't get ahead of it. I've been behind it for 4 months, Martha said. Nobody had an answer for that. Dana asked permission to scan copies of the documents. Martha agreed. George kept the originals. Dana slid a yellow legal pad toward me before the scanner stopped humming. Write down the sequence while it's fresh. Who called whom? When you saw the serial? When Scott removed the unit? Don't improve the story. Don't fill gaps. That sounded familiar. In aviation, a bad record often started with somebody trying to make yesterday look cleaner than it had been. I wrote the times I knew and left blank the ones I didn't. Martha watched me do it. You really keep records like this for everything? Not everything. George gave the folder a dry tap. Maybe we should have. While the scanner worked in the next room, I studied the empty generator pad in George's photograph. A number on paper was one thing, an empty slab was another. George watched me. Has Scott had money trouble before? The question pulled my attention away from the photo. What makes you ask? He kept telling us delays were vendor issues, then labor, then inspections. Every explanation bought another week. I rubbed my thumb along the edge of my notebook. 2 years ago, one of his larger jobs went bad. Foundation problem. Martha stopped sorting papers. I continued because there wasn't a clean way around it. A subcontractor and an engineering firm were fighting over responsibility. Insurance wasn't paying fast enough. Scott had payroll, suppliers, jobs in progress. What did you do? George asked. I loaned him money. Dana looked up. How much? $100,000. Martha's hand froze over the folder. The number sounded different in that room than it had in my kitchen 2 years earlier. After Evelyn died, I'd moved part of our retirement savings into simpler accounts because I didn't want to keep managing everything we'd built together. Scott came to me during that foundation mess with payroll figures, overdue vendor bills, and a face I'd known since he was a boy standing beside a broken window. He hadn't asked me to make him rich. He'd asked me to keep 25 people working. At least that was how I'd heard it. George broke the silence. Did he pay you back? Most of it. Over time. Did you know he was moving customer money around? No. That answer came quickly, because it was true. Dana's voice stayed even. And today you still don't know exactly what he was doing then. No. Important distinction. 2 years ago, I had seen a son with a company in trouble. Now I had a generator that appeared to exist in more than one story at once. Those weren't the same thing. Not yet. After the Ellises left, Dana walked me through what not to do. Don't deliver anything from your garage to a homeowner because they show you an invoice. Don't sell anything. Don't hide anything. Don't alter your log. Keep the photographs in their original form. And forward me the email with the Mesa Vista attachment so we preserve that chain. What about the garage? If Scott still has access and the materials are his company's property, you may not be able to stop removal just because you have questions. But document what leaves. And don't destroy your own records. My phone rang before I reached the parking lot. Scott. I let it ring once more, then answered. You met with the Ellises, he said. Not a question. Martha filed something. She sent a written complaint to the office after she left you. His voice was clipped. Do you understand what you're doing? I met 2 customers who showed me documents. You're interfering with active jobs. They showed me an invoice. Dad, I employ 25 people. 25. You start calling clients and hinting that something's wrong. Lenders hear about it. Vendors tighten terms. Customers panic. People lose jobs. A delivery truck hissed to a stop on the street behind me. Heat pressed through my shirt. I didn't call Westbridge. That's your defense? It's a fact. Scott exhaled. You always do this. One discrepancy becomes an inspection. One inspection becomes a shutdown. Then give them the generator they paid for. Silence. Short, sharp. You don't know what they paid for, he said. Then show them. He hung up. That afternoon, Martha sent Dana one more item with permission to share it with me. Not a bank record, not some secret ledger. An invitation. Cole Signature Renovation's grand showroom opening. The date sat at the bottom. Same week the Ellis's payment cleared. My first instinct was too simple. Their money went in. Showroom opened. Therefore one paid for the other. Dana stopped me before I said it. Timing is a question, Ray. Not proof. I know. Good. Keep knowing. I drove home with that sentence beside me. The garage looked different after meeting Martha and George. Not because the boxes had changed, because I could attach names to at least one empty space now. A husband, a wife, a concrete pad waiting for equipment they believed they had bought. My phone buzzed with a message from Scott. Stop contacting my clients. I set the phone down. A minute later, Dana called. I've reviewed enough to tell you one thing, she said. Until we know who owns what and what these documents mean, don't let anyone erase the history of that garage. I looked toward the workbench. My notebook was still there. So was the working copy. For the moment, Dana's question stayed with me all the way home, but the garage answered it before I could. The overhead door was open, not broken. Open. My truck rolled to a stop halfway up the driveway. Heat shimmered above the concrete, and the garage motor gave one tired click as if somebody had used it recently. A company truck was gone, but twin tire marks cut through the dust near the side gate. I got out without shutting my door. Half the crates were missing. Cabinet boxes that had been stacked along the west wall were gone. So were two wrapped appliances, a pallet of windows, and the generator space I had photographed the day before was nothing but a pale rectangle on the floor. A yellow shipping strap lay curled near the drain, and one cardboard corner had been crushed into the concrete by a boot. The keypad still worked. That mattered. Scott had used the old access code. I hadn't changed it because, until Dana spoke to me, I had never treated my son's use of the garage like a legal problem. He'd stored company materials there with my permission. The place wasn't a vault. It was overflow space behind my house. I walked the cleared wall slowly and compared it with the photographs on my phone. One cabinet set gone. Two appliance crates gone. Window pallet gone. A smaller box labeled Canyon Ridge still sat behind a stack of trim, untouched. I wrote nothing yet. First, I wanted to know what else had changed. The notebook was on the workbench. For 1 second, that was enough. Then I opened it. Mesa Vista was gone. The page had been torn out close to the binding, leaving a rough white edge. I ran my thumb over it. Not loose from age, not folded out. Gone. The working photocopy sat in a locked drawer beneath the bench. I reached into my pocket for the small key, then stopped. The drawer was already unlocked. Inside were receipts, a tape measure, 2 pencils, and an empty space where the July copy had been. I checked the floor, the trash can, the shelves beneath the bench. Nothing. Then I looked at the spare key hook. Empty. Scott had once kept the little garage ring because deliveries sometimes arrived while I was out. Code for the door. Small key for the workbench drawer. I had never asked for it back because I had never needed to. Until now. I called Dana. Don't touch anything else, she said. I already opened the notebook. That's fine. Photograph it where it is. Photograph the drawer. Photograph the garage. Then tell me exactly who had access. Scott had the code. Anyone else? Blake knew it. Crew members came through when deliveries were here, but Scott usually texted first. What about the drawer key? I stared at the little brass lock. There was a spare on the garage ring. Who had that? Scott did when he started using the place. Dana was quiet for a moment. That explains access. It doesn't explain intent. Don't call this burglary. Don't call it evidence tampering. Not yet. My page is missing. I know what's missing. We still need to know who removed it and why. Her restraint irritated me because it was correct. I took the photographs. Wide shots first, then the torn binding, the open drawer, the empty key hook. I photographed the yellow strap on the floor without touching it, then went back through yesterday's images to make sure it hadn't been there before. The garage looked worse through a phone screen. Empty wall, dust outlines, torn page, open drawer. When I checked the doorbell camera, the footage gave me less than I wanted. A company truck had backed into the drive just after dawn. Blake stood near the side gate, clipboard under one arm, speaking to somebody outside the camera angle. 2 crew members carried boxes past him. The garage interior wasn't visible. Scott never appeared on screen. I backed up the clip and watched again. At one point, Blake glanced toward the house and held up 2 fingers. A crewman nodded and disappeared past the camera. 10 minutes later, he returned, carrying a long, wrapped package. Nothing about that movement told me what had happened to my notebook. That proved a truck came. It proved Blake was there. Nothing more. I saved the clip before the system could overwrite it, then exported a second copy to my computer. After that, I changed the garage code. At noon, Linda's car pulled into the driveway. She stepped out carrying sunglasses in one hand and a bottle of water in the other. No makeup, hair tied back. She looked at the open garage before she looked at me. Scott said you were making a scene. I'm standing in my own driveway. You know what I mean. Linda stopped near the workbench and took in the missing inventory. He had to move the materials. Had to? The lender is already asking questions about delays. Martha sent a complaint. People talk. Who told you about the lender? Scott. That answer came fast. I held up the notebook. Did he tell you somebody tore out the Mesa Vista page? Her eyes stayed on the paper longer than I expected. No. Did he tell you my copy disappeared too? No. Linda set the water bottle down. Ray, please don't turn this into something it isn't. What is it? A company with cash flow pressure. The word sat between us. How much pressure? She rubbed the bridge of her nose. I don't know exact numbers, but you know money moves between jobs. Every contractor bridges timing. Every contractor? You know what I mean. A client pays on Friday, payroll hits Monday, a supplier invoice comes Wednesday. Money doesn't arrive in neat little boxes with project names printed on it. That's not what I asked. Linda's voice lowered. Scott has carried jobs while customers fought over change orders. He's paid crews before draws cleared. He's covered vendors from other incoming cash. That's normal when timing gets ugly. Did you know Westbridge paid for a generator they don't have? She looked away. No. Did you know Mesa Vista had the same serial listed as installed? No. Did you know that page was missing before you came here? Her jaw tightened. I said no. I believed she knew the company had been moving money to keep things running. I did not know that she knew anything about the generator. Those were different facts, and I forced myself to keep them separate. Linda picked up the water bottle again. Scott thinks you're trying to punish him because of dinner. That would be easier. What does that mean? It means a broken plate is simple. She stared at me. I tapped the torn edge in the notebook. This isn't. Her shoulders dropped slightly. Ray, if the lender pulls back, people lose jobs. If customers panic, the company can't finish work. Then everybody gets hurt, including the people you think you're protecting. I'd heard almost the same argument from Scott. That didn't make it false. 25 employees, subcontractors, families. For a moment, the garage smelled like hot cardboard and old machine oil, and I could see Scott 2 years earlier at my kitchen table with payroll sheets spread between us. He had needed money then. Real money, real jobs. I had written the check, $100,000. The memory made my mouth dry. Linda saw me hesitate. Talk to him before you do anything else, she said. Just father to son. He cleared the garage before talking to me. He thought you were going to hold company property. I told him I wouldn't. He doesn't trust where this is going. Neither do I. Linda left without another argument. By late afternoon, Dana called again. I want you to send me the camera clip, photographs of the notebook, and the pictures you took before the removal. I already saved everything. Good. I changed the code. Also good. I looked at the empty drawer. What if the page and working copy were the only records of those entries? Dana paused. I turned toward the house. Evelyn's papers were inside a gray fireproof folder. The safe deposit key lived there, because I'd never found a reason to move it after she died. Monthly copies. Older records. The habit Scott had mocked at dinner. Dana asked, "Ray? I'm here. Is that the only copy you ever made?" My hand was already on the doorknob. I didn't answer her right away. No. I told Dana, it isn't the only copy. The safe deposit box key was cold against my palm when I said it. By 9 the next morning, I was standing inside a bank vault in Mesa with a gray metal box on a waist-high counter. The room smelled faintly of paper, carpet cleaner, and old air. A clerk left me alone after checking my identification, and the lock clicked behind her. Evelyn's documents filled the front half of the box. Insurance papers. Our marriage certificate. The title, History for the House. I moved them carefully, slower than I needed to. Behind them sat a manila envelope marked Garage Logs. My handwriting. July. I opened it. Mesa Vista was there. So was Westbridge. Same serial. Same dates I remembered. Nothing in those photocopies proved why the generator had moved, or who had paid for what, but somebody had taken the original page and the working copy from my garage. And now I had a record that existed before anybody had a reason to argue about it. I called Dana from the parking lot. "Bring copies to me," she said. "Keep the archive where it is." "You think somebody will try again?" "I think originals are easier to defend when they stay where they were." "Fair enough." At her office, Dana compared the archive copy to the photographs I had taken before the page disappeared. Same handwriting, same entries, same sequence. She tapped the page with the capped end of a pen. Useful. Enough? For what? To prove what Scott did. Dana leaned back. "You're still asking the wrong question." I waited. "This proves what you recorded," she said. "It helps establish timing. It does not prove Scott's intent. It doesn't prove ownership. It doesn't prove who removed your page. We still need records that don't come from you." The answer was not satisfying. It was also the answer I trusted. I drove to Scottsdale that afternoon and asked Scott to meet me at the showroom after closing. He agreed too quickly. The place was quiet when I arrived. No clients, no designers, just recessed lights over polished samples and the smell of fresh wood stain. Scott stood near a display kitchen with his sleeves rolled up. "You brought a lawyer into this," he said. "I brought questions to a lawyer." Same result. I put a copy of the July log on the counter between us. Scott looked down. For the first time since dinner, he didn't make a joke. "You kept copies." "You knew I did." His eyes stayed on Mesa Vista. "Dad, you have no idea how construction cash flow works." "Then explain it." He turned away, walked to the end of the counter, then back. 2 years ago, Desert Crest nearly killed us. I knew the project by name, the foundation problem. Scott continued. The subcontractor blamed engineering. Engineering blamed soil conditions. Insurance sat on everything while I had crews to pay, and vendors threatening to stop delivery. I remember. No, you remember writing a check. You don't remember what it looked like from my side. His voice sharpened, then settled. We had money coming in on other jobs. I used it to keep payroll moving until the claim got sorted. Customer money. Incoming company money. That's not the same thing. It is when everything runs through one operating company. I watched him. How many times? Scott rubbed his palm over the counter. At first? Once. The word came out almost quietly. And after that, timing kept slipping. Scott. Vendors wanted deposits. Customers delayed draws. One job covered another for a week, then money came back around. Did it? He looked at me. Most lies need extra words. Scott used fewer. Usually. I let that sit. You had the 100,000 I gave you. I used it. For what? Payroll, vendor balances, insurance deductibles, keeping people from walking out. The answers came fast now. Then Scott leaned forward. You know what's funny? You're acting like I tricked you. You saw the payroll sheets. You saw the vendor notices. You knew I was moving money around to survive. I knew you were short. You knew enough. No. His mouth tightened. I loaned you my money. That did not mean I agreed to use somebody else's payment for something they didn't receive. Scott pushed away from the counter. You don't even know that happened. Then show me it didn't. Silence. Not long. Long enough. He walked to a desk near the back wall and opened a folder. I'll sell the showroom. I thought I'd heard him wrong. What? The expansion is the problem now. Too much overhead. We sell this place. Pull back to core projects. Clear Westbridge. Clean up the old balances. Scott held the folder out. You want this fixed? Fine. I'll fix it. Inside were broker estimates and equipment lists. Real documents. Not theater. He had already started looking at what the showroom could bring. How long? I asked. 1 week. 1 week to do what? Put a sale package together. Move cash where it belongs. Get Martha and George resolved. And the other clients? Scott's eyes flicked toward me. What other clients? That question was almost enough to stop the conversation. Almost. He exhaled and lowered his voice. Dad, don't blow up 25 jobs because you found one bad equipment trail. Give me a week. Linda called me that evening. Her voice sounded tired. He told me about selling the showroom. He told you why. He said, it's gotten too big. That's one way to say it. Ray. A cupboard door closed on her end of the line. If he's willing to shrink the company, isn't that what you wanted? I looked at the garage through my kitchen window. I want the records to make sense. Then give him room to make them make sense. For the first time since dinner, there was a path where nobody lost everything. Scott could sell the showroom. Westbridge could get paid. The company could shrink. Employees could keep their jobs. I could stop being the father standing in the road while his son's business came apart. I wanted that path. That was the dangerous part. The next afternoon, Dana called. Martha connected me with another homeowner. I sat up straighter. How? Mesa Vista and Westbridge had already been comparing disputes with a small group of clients before you got involved. Martha asked one of them if they were willing to share documents. So this isn't somebody you found? No. They came through Martha. Okay. Dana turned a page. The customer authorized me to review their contract, invoice, and payment history. I'm not drawing a conclusion yet. But the invoice date matters. I waited. It's from after the foundation emergency. After your loan to Scott. After he had time to scale back. My fingers tightened around the phone. What's wrong with the invoice? Same kind of problem. Equipment described as delivered. Customer says it wasn't. Different item. Different project. I closed my eyes for a second. The showroom sale packet was still on my kitchen table. Scott had asked for 1 week. Dana continued. This doesn't prove every disputed charge is intentional. It does tell us the conduct didn't end when the original cash crisis ended. That changed the shape of it. A desperate bridge during a bad project was one thing. Keeping the bridge open after the emergency passed was another. I drove to Scott's house that evening and found him in the driveway beside his truck. He looked at me, then at the folder in my hand. You couldn't give me 1 week. I was going to. Scott laughed once. Of course you were. I held up the new invoice. This is later. His face changed. Not much. Enough. I stepped closer. He didn't answer. A sprinkler clicked somewhere across the street, ticking water against gravel. Scott opened the truck door, then left it hanging there. You think this is about the showroom? He asked. I think the showroom is what people can see. And the rest? That's what I'm trying to understand. Scott looked toward the house. Linda's silhouette crossed behind the blinds and disappeared. You always wanted everything clean, he said. Numbers lined up. Parts labeled. Life doesn't work like your hangar. No, I said. But invoices are supposed to. That landed harder than I expected. His hand dropped from the door handle. For a second, neither of us moved. When did saving the company become saving your image? Blake called Dana before he called me. That told me more than his first sentence did. Scott is setting me up, Blake said when Dana put him on speaker the next morning. I was sitting across from her desk with the July log copy in front of me. The office smelled like coffee and printer toner. Blake's voice came through thin and dry. Dana asked, "What makes you think that?" He sent Westbridge a written response blaming accounting irregularities on me. Were there accounting irregularities? Silence. Dana looked at me but said nothing. Blake finally answered, "Yes." That word changed the room. "Then come in with your own lawyer," Dana said. "And don't delete anything before you do." He arrived 2 hours later with a man in a gray suit named Martin Keller, who introduced himself as Blake's counsel and immediately told us the meeting was not an unrestricted confession. Dana nodded. "That's fine. We're here to understand what records exist and who had access." Blake looked worse than he had at dinner. No polished jacket, no company smile. His shirt collar sat crooked, and one fingernail had been bitten down far enough to redden the skin. Martin placed a legal pad between them. Blake started with the part that made him look bad. I moved money between obligations. Dana's pen stayed still. Be specific. Vendor balances, payroll, project draws. Authorized? Sometimes. And the other times? Blake's mouth tightened. I also took money. Scott had sent Dana a packet the night before. I hadn't seen all of it yet, only enough to know it involved Blake. Dana asked, "Personal withdrawals?" "Yes." "For what?" Blake stared at the table. Martin said quietly, "Answer if you're going to answer." "Gambling." The word came out flat. I thought of Scott telling me there was one bad equipment trail. Now there was a business partner admitting he had pulled money out for himself. Blake rubbed both hands over his face. "I paid some back." "Not all." "How much?" Dana asked. Martin cut in. "We're not stipulating totals in this room." "Fair." Blake looked at me. "Ray, I know what this sounds like." "I don't think you do." His jaw shifted. "I'm not saying I'm clean." That was the first useful thing he said. Dana asked what records Blake controlled. Vendor ledgers, project accounting exports, operating account access, payment schedules, bank statements. I can view and export what the company gave me access to. I'm a minority member, and I handled cash flow. Dana leaned forward. "If you provide records, they need to come through counsel." No screenshots dropped into Ray's email. No altered spreadsheets, original exports, preserved files, and a clear source. Martin nodded. "That's how we'll do it." Blake pulled out his phone, then stopped before unlocking it. "Messages too." "With Scott?" Dana asked. "Yes." "How far back?" "More than a year." Martin put a hand over the phone. "We'll preserve the device and cloud account first." Good. I had learned enough by then to understand why. A screenshot was a picture of a conversation. A preserved thread was a record. Scott's packet arrived in Dana's inbox while we were still sitting there. She opened it on a side monitor. Blake saw the first page and swore under his breath. The packet showed withdrawals to accounts Blake controlled, transfers with no project label, and a series of cash advances that did not look like payroll or vendor payments. Scott had not invented Blake's problem. Blake had given him one. Dana turned the screen slightly. "Are these yours?" "Some." "Which ones?" Martin raised a finger. "We'll respond after review." Blake leaned back. Scott knew. That was faster than his lawyer wanted. Martin closed his eyes briefly. Dana asked, "Knew what?" "The gambling. The withdrawals." "When?" "Last year." "How do you know he knew?" "Because he confronted me." "Any record?" Blake looked toward Martin. His lawyer answered this time. "There may be communications. We're preserving first." I watched Blake. "If Scott knew you were taking money, why keep you?" His laugh had no humor in it. "Because once he knew, I couldn't leave clean." "Meaning?" He said, "If I walked, He'd report every withdrawal and sue me into the ground. That sounds like a reason to stop helping him. It was a reason to do what he told me. Dana's voice sharpened. Don't erase your own choices. Blake nodded once. I'm not. Then he looked at me. He didn't trust me after that. He owned me. The line sounded rehearsed. Maybe it was, but his hands were shaking under the table. Dana asked, what did he use that leverage to make you do? Blake swallowed. Keep projects moving. That's vague. Move money where it was needed. Needed by whom? Scott. There it was. Still not enough. Not even close. Dana didn't chase the word. Show us records after council preserves them. Martin took over from there, explaining that Blake would provide original accounting exports he had lawful access to through the company, along with preserved communications. Anything outside that access would require another route. No magic. No secret ledger. Just a man, handing over the parts of a system he had helped run. That afternoon, after Blake and Martin left, Dana showed me a single message from a preserved thread that Martin had agreed could be disclosed for the limited purpose of evaluating the Westbridge complaint. Scott to Blake, use Mesa until Westbridge clears. No punctuation. No explanation. I read it twice. When? I asked. Dana gave me the date. It sat inside the same stretch of summer we were already examining. What does it mean? I don't know yet. I know what it sounds like. So do I. That's why we don't stop at what it sounds like. The words bothered me because Scott had used reassigned at the garage. Now I had used Mesa until Westbridge clears. Maybe it referred to a receivable. Maybe materials. Maybe a project account. Maybe nothing illegal at all. Context mattered. Dana closed the message. Blake also told his lawyer there's an old voicemail. My head lifted. From Scott? Yes. About Mesa? Yes. Can we hear it? Not yet. Why not? Because Blake is in it too, and his lawyer thinks releasing it now could expose him without the rest of the records being reviewed. Convenient. I said that out loud. Dana didn't disagree. It may be convenient. It may also be legally sensible. What did Blake say was on it? Enough that he doesn't want Scott controlling the story. That was all she had. I drove home with more questions than answers. Scott had a partner who stole. The partner claimed Scott knew. Scott had records proving Blake's withdrawals. Blake had messages that might prove Scott directed money movement. Each man had a knife. Neither had clean hands. That evening, Scott called. You met with Blake. I didn't ask how he knew. His lawyer contacted Dana. Scott laughed softly. Of course he has a lawyer now. You sent Westbridge a response blaming him because he handled accounting and stole from you. A pause. So he told you. He told Dana. Same thing. What did you do when you found out? Scott's voice went cold. I kept my company alive. That answer stayed with me. You didn't fire him. No. Why? Because businesses don't survive if you blow them apart every time somebody screws up. I almost answered. Then I heard my own history in his sentence. One more chance. One more check. One more mess contained inside the family. Scott continued. Blake is going to tell you whatever keeps him out of trouble. Maybe. He'll make me the villain. Because that's cheaper than being the thief. Maybe. You really don't know whose side you're on, do you? I looked toward the empty garage. I'm trying not to be on a side. That's what people say right before they pick one. He hung up. The next morning, Dana called before 8. Blake came back through counsel with one more thing he's willing to identify now. What? A project. I waited. He says Scott was more afraid of it than Mesa Vista. Why? He won't say yet without walking us through the records. Name? Dana hesitated only long enough to make sure I was listening. Canyon Ridge. The name meant nothing to me at first. That almost made it worse. Mesa Vista had a generator. Westbridge had an invoice. Canyon Ridge was just 2 words Blake had carried into the room like something sharp wrapped in cloth. Canyon Ridge? I repeated. Dana slid a thin packet across her desk. Blake's counsel identified the project from records already being preserved. That's all we use for now. I opened the packet. The first page was a customer complaint. No dramatic accusation, no words like fraud, just a list of things the homeowner said had not matched what was promised. One line stopped me. Backup electrical system. I looked up. Generator. Different component, Dana said. Don't make Mesa Vista fit everything. Fair. The Canyon Ridge homeowner had complained about a high-capacity automatic transfer unit built during the remodel. The packet included an invoice, 2 installation photographs, and an email from Scott's company explaining that the installed equipment met specifications. Dana had already obtained permission from the homeowner to review the documents. Who contacted them? I asked. The complaint information came through Blake's preserved project files. My office called. The homeowner agreed to speak. No coincidence. No mystery witness appearing at the door. I studied the installation photograph. The housing shape looked wrong. 30 years around, aircraft had trained me to notice when a part claimed to be one thing and wore the body of another. Different industries, same habit. I enlarged the picture. Can we get a clearer shot of that label? Dana called the homeowner with me in the room. A woman named Carol Jensen answered and agreed to take another photograph of the installed unit's rating plate. It arrived 20 minutes later. I read the model designation. Then I checked the invoice. They didn't match. The invoice listed a higher-rated model. The installed unit was lower. My chair scraped back. That could be a safety problem. Dana's eyes lifted. Could be. If the backup system is undersized and the house loses power. Stop. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. You maintained aircraft. You are not an Arizona building inspector, electrician, or engineer on this project. I know what model numbers mean. You know they're different. That's what you know. The correction stung. Mostly because she was right. Dana called an independent licensed electrical consultant her firm had used on construction disputes before. His name was Aaron Price. He agreed to review the invoice, photographs, equipment label, and relevant system notes without making any conclusion beyond the documents. While we waited, Scott sent a letter. Not to me. To Dana. Cease and desist. The language accused us of interfering with active contracts, contacting customers, damaging business relationships, and spreading unsupported accusations. Dana read it once and set it down. What does this change? I asked. It changes how careful we need to keep being. Can he stop us from talking to people who contacted you? Not by writing an angry letter, but we don't make public accusations, and we don't contact customers without a legitimate reason. Scott called me an hour later. You happy now? What happened? Carol Jensen called my office asking about equipment ratings. I didn't tell her to accuse you of anything. You put a lawyer in her ear. She had a complaint before I knew her name. You're splitting hairs. No. I'm keeping facts separate. He laughed once. That sounds exactly like you. Then his voice dropped. You're not qualified to tell anybody. Canyon Ridge is unsafe. I didn't. Did you think it? That stopped me. Scott continued. Because that's what you do. You find one number out of place, and suddenly the whole machine is falling out of the sky. I asked for an expert. Congratulations. He hung up. I sat with that longer than I wanted. Maybe I had moved too fast. A wrong model on an invoice was not the same as a dangerous installation. By late afternoon, Aaron called Dana back. She put him on speaker. I reviewed the equipment information, he said. Based on the configuration shown and the load information provided, I cannot say the installed unit is unsafe or below minimum requirements. My shoulders went still. So it's fine? I asked. I didn't say that. Aaron continued. The installed unit appears capable of serving the documented configuration, but the invoice lists a different, higher-rated model. If the customer was charged for that specific model and received this one instead, that's a contract and representation issue. I'm not giving you a legal opinion. Dana thanked him and ended the call. I looked down at the 2 model numbers. I had been wrong about the danger, not about the mismatch. That mattered. It also reminded me that being suspicious did not make every suspicion true. On my way home, Linda called. Can we talk? Her voice sounded different, not softer, more careful. I met her at a coffee shop near my house. She arrived with nothing in her hands. No folder, no envelope. That surprised me. Scott won't show me the books, she said before I sat down. Did you ask? Yes. What did he say? That it's company business. You've defended that company for weeks. Her mouth tightened. I defended my husband. Those were not the same words. Linda looked toward the front window. I asked him what happens if the lender pulls the expansion. I asked what we personally guaranteed. I asked whether the house is exposed. And he told me not to worry. That answer bother you? It bothers me when I ask for numbers and get comfort. For the first time, I heard something of my own voice in hers. She stirred coffee she wasn't drinking. There's a list. What list? I don't know. Then why mention it? Because Mesa Vista is on it. I stayed quiet. Linda explained that Scott kept a small home office off their bedroom. Shared house, shared desk, piles of papers everywhere. She had gone in looking for mortgage documents after he refused to discuss personal exposure. On top of a stack was a handwritten project list. Did you take it? I asked. No. Good. I took a picture. Where is it? With my lawyer. That surprised me again. You hired counsel? I need to know what's mine before Scott decides what's everybody's. She said it without heat. Linda's attorney had advised her not to carry company papers around or hand originals to family. She had sent the photograph through counsel. If your lawyer thinks Dana can receive it, I said, let them handle it. That's already happening. I watched her. What's on the list? Project names. Marks beside them. Short notes I don't understand. Anything else? Mesa Vista is circled twice. The coffee machine hissed behind the counter. And Westbridge? I asked. Yes. How is it marked? The same little symbol beside both. What symbol? Linda took a paper napkin and drew it with a ballpoint pen, a short angled mark crossing a line. Nothing I recognized. Canyon Ridge? I asked. Her pen stopped. Yes. The answer came almost too quietly. I folded the napkin and left it on the table. I wasn't going to turn a doodle into evidence. Not anymore. The next morning, Dana called after Linda's lawyer formally shared the photograph. Ray, the image is clean enough to review. What do you see? Exactly what Linda described. Project names. Marks. No explanation. Mesa Vista? Circled twice. Westbridge? Same symbol. And Canyon Ridge? A pause. Same list. I closed my eyes. Dana sent me the photograph, but only after Linda's attorney confirmed she could. I enlarged it on my laptop. Mesa Vista sat near the top. Westbridge was 3 lines below. Canyon Ridge appeared farther down, with the same angled mark Linda had drawn on the napkin. A fourth project name sat between them with no mark at all. That helped more than another accusation would have. Whatever the symbol meant, Scott was not putting it beside everything. I printed one copy and wrote nothing on it. For once, I wanted the page to stay exactly as it was. 3 projects, 3 different disputes. Still no explanation for the marks. Dana continued. We do not assign meaning to the symbols until we have something that tells us what they mean. I know. Good. I looked at the photocopied garage log on my desk. Mesa Vista, Westbridge, now Canyon Ridge. The names had stopped feeling separate, but I still didn't know what connected them. Not yet. And after the mistake I had nearly made about safety, I wasn't going to force an answer just because 3 names finally sat on the same page. Dana spread the project list beside 3 folders and said, Now we see whether those marks mean anything at all. We were in her conference room again, but this time, an accountant named Victor Hale sat at the far end with a laptop open and 2 legal pads covered in dates. Dana had hired him after Blake's counsel began turning over preserved accounting exports. He wasn't there to accuse anybody. He was there to make the dates stop arguing with each other. Victor pointed to Mesa Vista. Customer invoice says installed. Then Westbridge. Customer payment says funded. Then Canyon Ridge. Invoice lists one model. Installation photograph shows another. He moved to Blake's accounting export. Now we compare those with internal entries. I leaned closer. The symbols from Scott's handwritten list appeared nowhere in the accounting system. Whatever they meant, they were his own shorthand. Victor clicked through a series of entries. Westbridge payment clears here. 2 days later, vendor balances tied to Mesa Vista are reduced. My first reaction came too fast. So Westbridge paid Mesa. Victor looked at me over his glasses. No, that is not what I said. Dana almost smiled. Victor continued. I said the timing overlaps. We need source records and account treatment before calling it anything more. I nodded. I was getting used to being corrected. That probably meant I needed it. The supplier records were cleaner. Martha, George, and the Mesa Vista homeowner had each authorized release of records tied to their own disputes. Miguel's company provided order dates, model numbers, serial information, and shipment history within that permission. One physical generator, one serial. No second unit hiding behind a paperwork mistake. Victor laid the supplier sheet beside my July garage log. This confirms the unit Ray recorded is the same unit appearing in both customer files. Dana tapped the table. That's corroboration. Not proof of everything, but no longer just my notebook. For the first time, the garage had an outside witness made of paper. Victor moved to the project list photograph Linda's lawyer had provided. Mesa Vista and Westbridge carry the same handwritten mark. Canyon Ridge carries it too. A fourth project does not. What does the mark mean? I asked. We still don't know. Can accounting tell us? Maybe eventually. Not yet. That answer would have bothered me a week earlier. Now it felt safer than certainty. Around noon, Martha called Dana. George was on the line with her. Their contractor complaint had moved forward enough for a bond claim and negotiated payment arrangement to begin. It would not make them whole overnight. It would not finish their house. But they were getting a substantial portion back. Martha's voice cracked only once. So this means we can hire someone else for the generator? Dana answered carefully. It means you have money coming back under the agreement. Your new contractor still needs to price the work. George let out a breath that came through the speaker like air leaving a tire. That's more than we had yesterday. I stared at the empty space in front of me where their invoice had been sitting. For days, every document had opened another problem. This one closed part of one. Not all of it. Enough. By mid-afternoon, the next consequence arrived. Scott's lender had placed the planned expansion on hold. Dana received the notice because Cole's signature renovations had disclosed the active customer disputes under the financing terms. The lender wasn't accusing Scott of a crime. It simply would not release expansion funding while the accounting questions remained unresolved. I read the message twice. The showroom Scott had offered to sell was no longer just an expensive choice. It was becoming a stranded one. Scott called before I left Dana's office. Meet me. Where? The showroom. His voice carried none of the sarcasm from our last conversation. I went. Half the sample lights were off when I arrived. A broker's packet sat on the display counter where Scott had shown me the sale estimates before. He pushed it toward me. Expansion is dead. For now. No. Dead. Dead. Scott walked past the kitchen display and stopped beside a wall of cabinet samples. You wanted me smaller. Congratulations. I wanted the record straight. You keep saying that like records don't have consequences. They do. You didn't save me 2 years ago because the records were straight. There it was. He turned to face me. You wrote me $100,000 because there were people on payroll, because vendors were calling, because you understood that sometimes you keep the machine running first and sort the mess second. I loaned you my money and taught me what? I said nothing. Scott's voice dropped. That every mess could be fixed with one more check. The words hit because they belonged partly to me. I had solved problems with money when I could. Tuition, a bad truck loan, the foundation crisis. I called it helping. Maybe Scott had learned something else. He opened the broker packet. I resigned from day-to-day operations. We sell the showroom assets. Blake is out. We use the proceeds to settle Westbridge and the other customer disputes. Company survives smaller. That's your offer? That's the outcome where people get paid. And what do you want from me? Stop feeding this beyond the civil claims. Stop helping Dana turn every bad decision into a crusade. I looked at the packet. There were real numbers inside. Sale estimates, outstanding balances, a path, not a clean one, still a path. If Martha gets paid, Scott said. If the customers get settled, what exactly are you still trying to win? That question followed me home. I didn't have a good answer. The revenge I thought I wanted at dinner had already changed shape. Scott's expansion was frozen. His showroom was going. Martha and George were finally getting money back. Maybe accountability did not require total destruction. Maybe stopping here protected the workers who had nothing to do with any of it. I was standing in my kitchen, looking at Scott's broker packet, when Dana called. Blake's counsel released the voicemail. Everything in me went still. Why now? The formal claims changed his exposure. His lawyer decided cooperation is safer than letting Scott define the transactions alone. Is it preserved? Yes. Original device and cloud copy. Exported through counsel. No loose file. No anonymous recording. The thing had a source. Dana did not play it immediately. Ray, before you hear this, understand what it is. One voicemail. Context still matters. I know. Then, Scott's voice came through my phone. Tired. Irritated. Not theatrical. Blake, move the Mesa money before they ask. Westbridge should clear by Friday. I don't want another call about that account. The recording ended. I didn't speak, Dana said. The timestamp is after the customer complaints had already started. After he knew. After he had noticed there were questions. And after he told me he was fixing things. Yes, that was the part that changed it. Not the words by themselves. The timing. Scott had asked me for a week. He had offered to clean up the company. But the voicemail came from a period when he already knew people were asking where their money and equipment had gone. He had not been stumbling forward blind. He had been managing what people could see, Dana said. We still verify everything around it. I know. What do you want me to do? I looked at the broker packet on my table. For a moment, I could still see the version where I stopped, where Scott sold the showroom, where Martha got paid, where the company shrank and the family pretended the rest had been a terrible business mistake. Then I heard his voice again in my head. Move the Mesa money before they ask. I picked up the packet and closed it. Send the preserved package to the channels that are entitled to receive it. Dana was quiet. Then she said, All right. The decision did not feel like winning. I stood there after the call with one hand on the counter. The refrigerator compressor kicked on, low and steady. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed, and a dog barked twice. Nothing dramatic happened. No sirens. No sudden knock. Just the knowledge that the next steps would belong to people who would ask harder questions than I could, and Scott would have to answer them, without me stepping between him and the consequences. It felt like removing my hand from a door I had been holding shut for years. The first formal notice arrived 3 days after Dana sent the preserved package. Not from the police. From a client. Cole Signature Renovations had received written notice, terminating a large remodel under a contract clause tied to unresolved financial and performance disputes. Another client paused work. Then a lender withdrew the expansion offer completely. The consequences did not fall all at once. They came in envelopes, emails, calls that stopped being returned. By the second week of September, Dana had a growing calendar of deadlines on her wall, and Victor Hale had begun separating what could be verified from what still depended on somebody's explanation. Scott called me on a Tuesday morning. Come to the showroom. No. Silence. Then his voice changed. Dad, I need one statement from you. What statement? That you knew we bridged money between projects during the foundation crisis. I knew you were short. That's not what I asked. I know. He exhaled. Please. The word did more than the shouting ever had. I drove to Scottsdale. Scott was waiting in his office with a single page on the desk. No lawyer. No Blake. No Linda. The showroom sounded hollow now. Half the display lights were off, and the front desk phone rang twice before going unanswered. Scott pushed the page toward me. The statement said, I had been aware. Cole's signature renovations used temporary cross-project borrowing as part of ordinary cash management during the crisis period. I read it once. Then again. You wrote this? My attorney drafted it. Does your attorney know I'm not signing? Can you just read the facts? I did. You gave me $100,000 after seeing what was happening. I gave you my money. His face tightened. You knew jobs, covered jobs. I knew your company had cash problems. You knew enough. No. I slid the paper back. I did not give you permission to use customer money for things they didn't receive. I did not approve false delivery status. I did not approve moving records out of my garage. Scott leaned back. There it is. What? You already decided what happened. No. Other people are checking what happened. That's worse. I stood. He looked suddenly older than 40. Not weak, worn. Dad. I stopped. If this company dies, 25 people don't get to say you were careful. I looked at him. They also don't get to say I signed something that wasn't true. I left the statement on his desk. A week later, supplier verification came through the formal customer claims and licensing inquiry. Miguel did not call me. That mattered. His company responded through the channels Dana had been waiting for. The records confirmed one physical generator tied to the serial number we had been following. Order history, shipment history, vendor account information within the authorized scope. 1 unit. No duplicate machine. No second serial hiding behind a clerical correction. Victor laid the supplier record beside Westbridge's invoice, Mesa Vista's status sheet, and my garage photographs. The representations don't line up with the physical history, he said. Dana nodded. That is stronger than any one witness. We built the sequence slowly. My notebook and safe deposit copy established when the unit sat in my garage. The serial photographs tied the physical machine to the log. Westbridge's contract, invoice, and payment records established what they were charged for. Mesa Vista's status sheet established what Scott's own file said had been installed. Supplier records fixed the actual unit history. Blake's accounting exports showed the timing of internal movements. The preserved message thread showed Scott telling Blake to use Mesa until Westbridge cleared. The voicemail showed Scott telling Blake to move Mesa money before questions grew. Then came the garage removal, the missing page, the working copy gone from the drawer. Dana put her pen down. None of this proves everything alone. No. But together? Victor answered. Together, the explanations have to fit more than one independent source. That was the first time the whole thing looked less like a family argument and more like a structure. A structure Scott had built. Blake's consequences started before Scott's were finished. His lawyer negotiated over the records he had provided, but cooperation did not erase the withdrawals. He lost his membership interest in the company as the wind-down discussions began. Civil repayment demands followed. Separate review of the gambling-related transfers stayed open. When I asked Dana whether Blake was getting off easy, she shook her head. He's getting treated according to what he did and what he can prove. That's different. Scott tried one more time to make Blake the center of everything. He stole from me, my son said during a call in late September. Yes. And you're still using him. I'm using records. He manipulated accounts. Then the records should show that too. You really think paper can tell you who started this? No. That stopped him. What? I think choices tell me who kept it going. Scott ended the call. By October, Linda had moved into a furnished rental. She told me herself. No dramatic scene. No packed suitcase on a lawn. She called and said, My attorney told me I needed space while we figure out what I'm personally exposed to. Are you filing for divorce? I don't know yet. That answer was honest enough. What does Scott say? He keeps asking whether I trust you more than him. What do you tell him? Linda was quiet. Then she said, I trust the numbers. A week after that, I drove past the showroom. A white box truck sat at the curb. 2 employees carried sample cabinet doors through the front entrance and loaded them inside. Another man removed the company name from the reception wall, letter by letter. No crowd watched. No one cheered. Scott stood inside with his hands on his hips. He saw my truck through the glass. I kept driving. The licensing matter moved slower. A complaint review became a formal proceeding. Dana explained that Scott's contractor status could be restricted or temporarily suspended while the evidence and customer claims were evaluated, not permanently revoked. Not yet. A separate referral regarding possible fraud was being reviewed. No arrest. No handcuffs. Just another file moving through another system. That was almost harder to watch because Scott could not fight one dramatic enemy. He had to answer forms, records, customers, a lender, a regulator, people who did not care that he was my son. Near the end of October, Victor gave Dana the final supplier corroboration for the generator sequence. I was in her office when she placed the file in front of me. Read the last page. Miguel's company confirmed the unit represented by that serial had only one documented shipment path. It did not support both customer representations. That was the last technical piece we had been waiting for. Not a confession, not a secret account, a physical unit that could only be in one place at a time. I ran my finger under the serial number, the same habit that started all of this. Dana closed the file. That's enough for today. My phone rang. Scott, I answered. His voice sounded far away. Come get the garage key. I said nothing. I'm done. What does that mean? The house is going on the market. Company's winding down. Linda's gone. Showroom's closing. His breath caught, then steadied. Come get the key, Dad. When? Tomorrow. The line went quiet. Then Scott added one more sentence. I don't want it anymore. The next morning, I did not drive straight to Scott's house. I went to the garage first. The new code still worked. The workbench drawer was locked. My notebook sat where I had left it. One page missing, and the rest intact. Sunlight came through the side window in a narrow strip and caught dust hanging over the concrete. For weeks, every answer had come with another person's letterhead attached. Dana. Victor. A supplier. A customer. A lender. Now the last call had come from my son. I picked up the brass garage key from the hook where I had placed a replacement after changing the code. It was not the same key Scott still had. That one had gone from my pocket to a white tablecloth at dinner and then into his hand. I closed my fingers around the replacement. Tomorrow, I would take the other one back. Scott was already standing in my garage when I arrived. The overhead door was up, and late October light came in low across the concrete. The place looked bigger without the crates. Cleaner, too, though pale rectangles still marked where cabinets, appliances, and the generator had once sat. Scott stood beside the workbench with both hands in his coat pockets. He looked at the replacement key in my hand. Then he took the original brass key from his pocket and set it on the bench. The sound was small, metal against wood. That same key had sat between his wineglass and the Mesa Vista portfolio the night he knocked my plate onto the floor. Here, Scott said. I picked it up. He watched me turn it over once. You got what you wanted. No. His mouth tightened. Don't. I looked at the empty floor. They got back what was theirs. Scott laughed, but there was nothing behind it. Some of it. Some. Martha didn't get everything. No. George still has to hire another contractor. Yes. The company's gone anyway. Going. He looked toward the driveway. A realtor folder sat on the workbench beside him. I could see the edge of a listing agreement under the cover. The house goes live next week, he said. I didn't ask whether Linda had agreed. Her lawyer and Scott's lawyer were already dealing with the financial pieces. Separation first. Everything else would take time. Scott rubbed the back of his neck. Showroom closes Friday. Remaining jobs are being transferred or terminated. Victor's people are still digging through records. The licensing board put me under temporary restriction. I know. Of course you know. His voice sharpened. You know everything now. No. Scott looked at me. I know enough not to fix it for you. That stopped him. The refrigerator-sized silence that followed wasn't dramatic. No raised voices. No slammed doors. Just the hum of the garage light and a truck passing on the street beyond the wall. Scott pulled one hand from his pocket. You think this is some clean lesson? I don't. You think I wake up and suddenly understand you were right? No. Good. He nodded once. Because you weren't. I waited. You gave me money every time I got cornered. Not every time. Enough. You paid tuition when I dropped a semester. You went back. You covered that truck loan. You were 24. You wrote me $100,000 when the foundation job went bad. That one I remember. Scott stepped closer to the workbench. You kept telling me I could recover. I thought you could. So did I. That answer was quieter. For a second I saw the man from 2 years earlier at my kitchen table. Payroll sheets. Vendor notices. Sleepless eyes. Not the man at the restaurant. Not the man in Dana's files. Both. You could have stopped, I said. Scott looked at the concrete. I know. It was the closest thing to an admission I had heard from him. No speech, no confession, just 2 words. I let them stay there. He reached for the realtor folder, then changed his mind. Linda says she's not coming back right now. I know. She talks to you? Sometimes. About me? No. That bothered him. Good. Not because I wanted it to hurt, but because he was used to being the center of every conversation. Scott stared at the key in my hand. The lawyer bills are already bad. I said nothing. The house sale might cover part of it. Maybe not all. The personal guarantees are worse than I thought. Still nothing. He looked up. Dad. There it was. Not a demand. Not yet. I'm not asking for another 100,000. What are you asking? Help. The word sat between us. I felt the old reflex move before I could stop it. How much? From which account? What can I sell? The questions lined up as naturally as tools on a bench. I hated how familiar they were. Scott saw something change in my face. I don't mean cash. What do you mean? Talk to the lender. Tell them I'm cooperating. Tell Dana I'm trying to settle. Tell Linda I'm not hiding anything else. That's 3 different kinds of help. You know people listen to you. No. They do now. I place the brass key beside the replacement. I will not speak for you. Scott's jaw tightened. I'm not asking you to lie. You asked me to sign a statement that wasn't true. That was different. It wasn't. He turned away. The back of his coat had a crease down one shoulder. I almost reached out and flattened it. Old habit. I didn't. Scott faced me again. So that's it? No more checks. No calls to lenders. No buying assets out of the company. No telling anybody you meant well so they should go easier. You'd let me lose everything. I'm letting you answer for what you did. His face hardened. Same thing. No. I pointed at the empty floor. Martha lost months. George lost money. Canyon Ridge got billed for equipment that didn't match the invoiced model. Employees are losing jobs because the company couldn't keep doing what it was doing. I know. Blake is paying too. Scott looked toward the garage door. Blake's cooperation had helped him, but it had not erased the withdrawals. Repayment demands were moving forward. His membership interest was gone. Separate review remained open. Scott knew all of that. So everyone pays, he said. Yes. Except you. That one landed. I picked up the old notebook from the shelf. 1 missing page. The rest intact. I paid before. Scott shook his head. Not like this. No. He was right. I still had my house, my savings, my name. I had not built the system that collapsed, but I had funded him when asking harder questions might have mattered. I had called rescue love because that word was easier. I helped you avoid consequences, I said. Scott said nothing. That was mine. He looked at me. This is yours. The distinction seemed to take something out of him. He sat on the edge of the workbench. For the first time since I arrived, his shoulders dropped. What happens now? Your lawyers handle the settlements. And the license? The process continues. Criminal referral? Still being reviewed. He nodded. No sirens. No cuffs. Just time. Paperwork. Answers. Consequences that would keep arriving whether I was in the room or not. Scott reached under the realtor folder and pulled out an envelope. I left this. Inside was a proposed repayment and settlement schedule prepared for council review. Not signed. Not final. Names. Amounts. Dates. Martha and George were listed among the claimants. I read only the first page. This isn't an apology. I know. Good. He stood. At the garage door, Scott stopped. Do you hate me? The question was so blunt it almost sounded like it came from somebody else. I looked at my son. No. He waited. That doesn't change what happens next. Scott nodded once. Then he walked out. I stayed in the garage after his truck left. The brass key lay beside the repayment schedule. I picked it up. For years, that garage had held my tools. Evelyn's Christmas boxes, old aircraft manuals I couldn't bring myself to throw away, and then Scott's company inventory. Now it held almost nothing. That was the point. No customer property. No disputed crates. No place for one project's problem to hide inside another. I put the repayment envelope in the drawer with the notebook. Then I closed it. Locked it. The key turned with a dry little click. Outside, the street was quiet. Scott still owed money. He still had legal proceedings ahead. Linda was still gone. Blake still had his own consequences. Nothing had been repaired between us. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. I lowered the garage door and watched the last strip of daylight disappear under it. For the first time in years, I wasn't standing between my son and the cost of his choices. I locked the door. I stood with my hand on the latch a moment longer. There was no satisfaction in the metal, no victory hiding in that little brass shape, only a boundary I should have drawn years earlier. This time, I meant to keep it, and kept the key. What this story leaves you with is not a lesson about how to destroy someone who humiliates you. It is a lesson about what happens when love loses its boundaries. You can help your children, support them when they fail, lend them money when they are struggling, and still refuse to protect them from the consequences of choices they knowingly make. Those two things are not opposites. Sometimes, refusing to rescue someone is the most responsible thing you can do. You also learn why facts matter when anger is personal. After a humiliation like Ray suffered at dinner, it would have been easy to strike back immediately. But anger can make you certain before the evidence makes you right. Ray repeatedly had to separate what he suspected from what he could actually prove. When he thought Canyon Ridge might involve a safety danger, an expert corrected him. He accepted that correction. That matters. Accountability is stronger when you are willing to discover that part of your own theory was wrong. The same principle applies to family conflict outside a courtroom or a business. If somebody you love has betrayed your trust, document what happened. Protect important records. Ask qualified people for help when money, contracts, property, or legal rights are involved. Do not exaggerate the facts just because the truth already hurts. And do not sign a statement you know is inaccurate, simply because refusing may cost someone you love money, status, or comfort. There is another uncomfortable lesson here. Repeated rescue can become permission without anyone ever saying the word. If you solve every financial crisis, make every phone call, smooth over every mistake, and shield someone from every consequence, that person may begin to believe consequences are problems other people exist to remove. Helping once is not the same as causing someone's misconduct. But when the same pattern repeats, you have the right to change what you participate in. You can also hold two truths at the same time. Someone can be your son and still be responsible for harming other people. You can love him and refuse to lie for him. You can remember the child you raised while dealing honestly with the adult standing in front of you. You do not have to turn love into hatred before you are allowed to establish a boundary. That may be the hardest question this story asks you. If someone in your own family crossed a line like Scott did, how many chances would you give before you stopped protecting them? Have you ever helped someone so many times that you later wondered whether your help was keeping them from changing? And if telling the truth meant losing a relationship you treasured, would you still tell it? Maybe your answer would be different from Ray's. That is worth talking about. Families are complicated, and forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation. Accountability does not always mean revenge. Sometimes the clearest message you can give another person is simple. I care about you, but I will not carry the consequences that belong to you. If this story reminded you of something you have lived through, share what you learned from it. Your experience may help someone else recognize the difference between supporting a loved one and protecting them from a truth they finally need to face.